We start with our Bloomberg exclusive this morning. The governor of the Central Bank of Russia has told this channel that Russia will not inflate its way out of the financial crisis it is facing.
In her first ever interview with an international broadcaster, Elvira Nabiullina told Bloomberg's Ryan Chilcote the bank is unlikely to reverse last month's surprise rate cut, as inflation is said to slow, having accelerated to the fastest in almost 7 years.
And Ryan is here with us now. Fascinating conversation then.
Yeah, we started with the ruble. I asked if, what was one of the world's the worst performing currencies last year, if we can expect more collapses. There's talk, of course, of that. And she said, no. Have a listen.
We are, of course, not expecting any kind of massive decrease in the ruble's exchange rate, because the decline in the oil price we saw was the third biggest in the last 40 years, and the amount of external debt that has to be paid this year is about a third less than last year.
Year-on-year inflation, could it go beyond 20%?
Inflation may be higher than the current 15%, but these higher levels of inflation are driven by past factors. Moreover, I'd like to point out that other inflationary factors will subside. We expect a contraction in economic activity and, of course, a contraction in demand. On top of that, we have very moderate dynamics in the money supply data. That's why we really expect inflation to slow down in the second quarter, after the second quarter, in the second half of the year, and into 2016. That's why there is no reason to talk about the inevitability of a rate increase.
When do you see lowering rates?
We'll make the decision on rates based on our analysis of the situation in the economy, our forecasts on the economy's development, and above all, on the dynamics of inflation. Analyzing the entire balance of risks, inflationary, risks to growth, and to financial stability. We'll make a decision that is consistent with our task of reducing inflation within the framework of our inflation targeting and achieving a level of 4% in the midterm.
When you lowered rates from 17% to 15%, you surprised almost everybody. And the conversation began, how independent really is Russia's central bank? Are you independent, or is this an arm of the Kremlin?
When we made the decision on cutting rates, we didn't do it at the expense of inflation, nor was it at the expense of our task in reducing inflation. We based it on our forecast for inflation and for economic growth. Of course, there is a lot of criticism of the central bank, but the Bank of Russia is very used to criticism. There are interest groups in the economy. Some gain from a weak ruble, others gain from a strong ruble. For many years, the central bank has been criticized on all sides, so we are used to it.
Are you independent?
We are independent.
There you have it. She says she's independent. Look, she has one of the toughest jobs in the world, already the 7th largest economy. She's sitting on, close to $500 billion worth of assets. Russia's headed into a recession. The currency last year was one of the world's worst performing. Now it's the world's most volatile. So I think a couple things to think about here. First off, on rates. Elvira Nabiullina last year nearly tripled rates. Started the year at 5.5%. The key rate went all the way up to 17%. And then the issue was, just a short while ago in January, she cut it to 15, surprising absolutely everyone. There was no suggestion that she was going to do that. That's what prompted the whole conversation, as you heard there, about whether she's really independent. But as you heard her argument is, it's not about where inflation is right now, it's where inflation is going. Sure, it's going to pick up in the first half of the year. She conceded that, beyond 15%, which is pretty extraordinary if you think about it. But in the second half of the year, she says it's going to fall. But all the while, style. She invokes Paul Volcker at one point as one of, the kind of central bankers that she likes and respects. She paints herself as someone who, first and foremost, is thinking about inflation and fighting inflation, and someone who will not allow Russia to inflate itself out of the crisis.
Of course, in the context of other central banks cutting rates, it wasn't that much of a shock in its own right, it was, but versus everyone else that's cut rates this year, it wasn't. That's why a little bit added to that. It's a big week in the Ukraine conflict. Diplomacy is escalating. Leaders head to Minsk, Russia, France, Germany on Wednesday, and Merkel heads to Washington. Is there a growing position between the U.S. and Germany?
Well, we don't know. I mean, basically, John Kerry was asked about that over the weekend, and his point was that while we have differences with the United States, with the European Union, and the main difference is whether it's even worth talking about arming the Ukrainian military. Those differences, as he put it, are tactical. They're not strategic. But what's interesting is we've got this big pickup in diplomacy, right? You've got the four leaders actually gathering, let's see if it happens, on Wednesday in the capital of Belarus, in Minsk. Poroshenko, Putin, Merkel, Hollande, for peace talks. I don't think, trying to remember if the configuration, those four haven't met since D-Day in Normandy. It's been a very long time. We've had lots of talks, but never at that kind of senior level. Never have we had the Russian president, the Ukrainian president sitting down with two intermediaries like that. So this could be really big. And why? It's because, there's, as Merkel put it last week, there's no particular reason to believe right now that there's any more sort of chance of solving this crisis than there was last week. They just believe that this is an opportunity, an effort that has to be seized upon before it's too late. So we'll see where that goes. But, the issue of arming the Ukrainian military is out there, and the issue of imposing more sanctions against Russia, perhaps as a compromise between the United States and the European Union, is also out there.